Well, good morning. It's 9 o'clock and we will begin. Appreciate you being here. First item I wanted to do is introduce a new board member, Dr. Bill Trout. Bill is right here. He's spent all day with us yesterday and is here today, and we're certainly pleased to have him on the board. He is the president of Rhodes College in Memphis. This is his third college presidency that he is serving. He's been a college president for something like 30 years or more than 30 years. So he is well experienced in the education area. We really question somebody that is able to put up with the stress and turmoil and so forth that goes with being a college president these days for that long, but it's very impressive. He's a native of Bolivar, Tennessee. He has chaired all kinds of important education committees and commissions. He's chaired the American Council on Education, the National Association of Independent Colleges and Universities, and certainly brings a great deal of experience to the board, and we're pleased to have you, Bill. Thank you. I wanted to start today by saying that we had a tremendous day yesterday. We spent all day here yesterday in workshops and so forth. We started out the day visiting two charter schools out near the Tennessee School Board Association building. Very impressive charter school programs. Wendy set this up for us. Wendy, we appreciate you getting that set up. But it's doing some amazing things, and I think we were really impressed with what we saw in those charter schools. We then returned to kind of our workshop agenda, which we frequently have on Thursday before these board meetings. We spent a good bit of time talking about board responsibilities, what we're responsible for, basically formulating a strategic plan or starting the work to formulate a strategic plan that will incorporate those responsibilities and clarify some of the things that we need to be doing as a board. We had Candace there, and she did a great job of presenting the strategic plan that she's working on for the department. It's kind of draft status at this point, but I think a great start and something that we feel good about and very supportive of the work that's gone into that strategic plan. We then had extensive session on the revisions to the education license policy that is part of our agenda today. Went through that in a lot of detail. That's item 3B on our agenda. We spent some time talking about the learning-centered leadership policy, which is item 3A on our agenda. Had a good discussion of that. And then we also spent some time reviewing the report that's been put together on the teacher and administrator evaluation, basically kind of a recap of year 3 of where we are with that whole process. I think really encouraged by the progress that's being made with the evaluation structures that are out there, not only the improvements and the expansion that we've had with the evaluation process, but the way that it's being received, the effectiveness of it. And at this point, you know, we see a lot of other states coming to Tennessee to see the good things that are happening relative to these evaluation systems. So a really good report there. We also had a report from Sarah on the standards review process, kind of where that is, what's happening there. Good report there. And then we spent some time talking about the high school math pilot. This is basically looking at what we're teaching in Algebra 2 and the thing that we approved at our last meeting in terms of looking at putting a group together to look at making some modifications in the requirements that we have for basically the last 2 years of math in high school and see if there's some things that we need to change there. Also, Candace has put together a assessment task force, and Candace, if you could give us kind of a report on where that stands, where you anticipate that going.
Thank you. Yes, we have put together an assessment task force that's really looking at assessment practices in the state of Tennessee, not only from the state level, but also at a local level, and how districts are utilizing assessments within their programs. We had our first meeting of the assessment task force Monday of this week. We had an excellent discussion. It was really an introduction to what's the purpose. Let's all get on the same page. We had an opportunity for the members to give feedback around what their expectations were around the task force, what did they want as a final product from the task force, as well as an opportunity for us to think through our goals together. Then we had an excellent presentation from the department that focused on what do we currently do in terms of state assessment, so we could be on the same page. What's required by statute? What are things that we're currently doing? And then we had an opportunity to give homework. That was my favorite part. We gave the task force some homework to do before we come back together. And they're also in the, right now, actually reviewing a survey that we've sent out in a draft form. This is a survey that we will be sending to all district superintendents within the next few days that actually allows us to get information district by district around how they are using assessments with much specificity right now inside the districts. We will do a similar survey with both teachers and parents/students, and we're looking at those surveys right now to get some feedback from that constituency. And then we will meet again on May 20th for an entire day, and during that day-long meeting we will look at the results from the feedback we've received from these surveys, as well as digging into more around purposes of assessment, results of the assessments that we currently have at our disposal, and are looking forward to putting together multiple other meetings during the summer with the intent of a report results of this by the end of the summer. So very, very productive, so I appreciate you asking.
Great. Thank you, Candace. Okay, well, I thought it was important to kind of review the full day. We started at 7 o'clock yesterday morning that we had, and worked through there. We moved through, some of these agenda items pretty quickly, but in most cases we've spent really a lot of time and substance on them prior to this meeting here. So if you want to hear some of that detailed discussion, you need to come to the workshop sessions. We probably spend more time talking about the really important issues there, and we'll move through them fairly quickly in this meeting. Okay, we will move into our agenda. The first is the consent items. We do want to remove several items from the agenda. We want to remove items 6, C, H, I, J, and K. Items 6, C, H, I, J, and K. We will keep the remaining items there under Section 6. We have the approval of the minutes included in that consent agenda, and also some technical changes, very brief technical changes to the career and technical education core standards that we have approved over the last several meetings here. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Got a motion? Second? Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. We'll move now to the report items. The first is the Blue Ribbon School recognition. And Egan, you, okay?
There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me. I'm incredibly excited to be here to kick off this meeting on a very high note. It's nice to be able to come and do something that is 100% fun and exciting. So my name is Megan Kerr, and I work in our district support division at the Department of Education. So we manage the 8 regional field offices, our centers of regional excellence across the state. And I've had the honor of working with the Blue Ribbon Schools program and the Title I Distinguished Schools program for the past year. I'd like to thank you all for having us here and allowing and inviting representatives from these schools to join us. We have a good number of them in the audience today, and you all will have a chance to I think, spend some time with them and talk to them about what's been happening in their schools after this meeting over in the Capitol. So I'm here to recognize 8 schools from across the state that have demonstrated really and truly tremendous success in academic achievement in some cases, and in other cases in really closing achievement gaps between groups of students in their schools. The first group I'm going to talk about are the Blue Ribbon schools. The Blue Ribbon Schools program is run by the U.S. Department of Education and has been recognizing elementary, middle, and high schools for outstanding academic achievement since 1982. States are invited to nominate a set number of schools that's designated by the U.S. Department of Education based on a very specific set of criteria. So we receive the criteria, run our data analysis according to those rules, and yield the 6 schools that Tennessee is allotted to nominate. The nominated schools must then complete an extensive application process, which I think our schools have just potentially finished in the last week or so, for the following year, and that is reviewed by the U.S. Department of Education. The whole process takes almost 2 years from the time we nominate them to where we are today. In 2014, as I said, Tennessee had 6 public schools recognized as Blue Ribbon schools. They were recognized nationally in Washington, D.C., along with schools from other states back in the fall. But we wanted to make sure we have an opportunity here in the state to recognize them for their tremendous work. Right now, I'm going to read the names of the schools for the Blue Ribbon, but on a quick process note, I think I will have all of the representatives from our schools stay seated until I finish my remarks, and then I'll invite the chairman and commissioner down to present them with their awards. So our 2014 Blue Ribbon schools are Foothills Elementary School from Maryville City Schools, Hillsborough Elementary Middle School from Williamson County Schools, Kenrose Elementary School, also from Williamson County, Madison Academic Magnet High School from Jackson-Madison County Schools, Martin Luther King Jr. Academic Magnet High School from Metro Nashville, and Trinity Elementary School from Williamson County. The second group of schools that we have to recognize today are the Title I Distinguished Schools. The National Title I Distinguished Schools program has been selecting superior Title I schools from all states for recognition since 1996, and each year Tennessee is able to select 2 schools among our Title I schools to receive this recognition. We recognize 1 for success in closing achievement gaps and 1 for success in outstanding academic achievement. Again, similar to the Blue Ribbon program, the National Title I committee sends us the criteria, and we abide by those rules and run our data analysis and yield our schools. So this year, the Title I schools were also recognized nationally in February, and we are recognizing them here in our state today. The first school is E.E. Jeter Elementary School from Shelby County, and this school is being recognized for outstanding academic achievement. And the second school is Cummings School, which is also from Shelby County, and they are being recognized for their exemplary work in closing gaps among subgroups of students. I think, it's truly what these schools have done is really tremendous, particularly with all of the changes that have been happening over the last several years, and that is really a testament to the people in those school buildings every day, the principals, the staff, and the teachers. So I'm thrilled to be able to recognize them and that they have been able to come and join us here today. So I think unless you all, are there any questions before we call them up and recognize them? Or did anyone want to give any other remarks?
I know I'm going to say some things when we're at the reception, but I want to have on record how important this group is, and we're thrilled to be able to honor them today. Personally, my mother led 2 schools to Blue Ribbon status, and so I know the time, energy, and effort it takes just to get the application together, much less to win that. And so I'm honored that you're here today and look forward to spending some time with all of you here in just a little bit. So thank you.
And let me just say that I think this is one of the most important and most enjoyable aspects of the state board, to recognize outstanding schools. And I'd like to say some said before, but I think it's important for these outstanding schools to share with others what they're doing. And I think sometimes in our education area, we don't do enough sharing of good practice. So it's great to recognize you, but with that comes a understanding that you're going to share what you're doing and reasons you got this recognition with others. So we hope that you'll do that. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the chairman and commissioner to come down maybe in front of where I'm sitting. I'll move over, and then I'll call each school up. We'll present them with their plaque and certificate and take a brief photo and try to move through it efficiently. Okay, the first school I'd like to invite up is, I should say that I'm not sure if all of our schools have made it. Some of them may still be navigating their way around downtown, trying to figure out where to go. So if no one comes up, we will move on to the next school. But the first school I would like to call up is Foothills Elementary School from Maryville City Schools. Madison Academic Magnet High School from Jackson Madison Schools. Hillsborough Elementary Middle School from Williamson County Schools. Kenrose Elementary School from Williamson County Schools. Trinity Elementary School from Williamson County Schools. Martin Luther King Jr. Academic Magnet High School from Metro Nashville Public Schools. E.E. Jeter Elementary School from Shelby County. And last but not least, we have Cummings School from Shelby County.
Okay. Again, congratulations to all the schools that we recognized. It's great and very enjoyable experience. I think I've got sunburn from all the flash cubes going off. But that is great. Okay, we will now move to our action items on first reading. Action item A, and Paul, I believe you have that. Good morning.
I also want to echo the congratulations to the Blue Ribbon Schools. I was fortunate to sitting on this side. There we go. Fortunate, I want to echo the congratulations for the Blue Ribbon Schools. I was fortunate to lead one and be on the other side of this in 2012 at Hume Fogg. I know how much work, and as the commissioner said, and also, especially if Dr. Carr is still here, there is an intense rivalry between Hume Fogg and MLK, and we always thought we were slightly ahead, and I don't think we can say that anymore at Hume Fogg for MLK. So congratulations to all of them. Our first item today is, as we mentioned, the chairman mentioned yesterday at the workshop, a good discussion on the leader licensure policy with 3 updates. One was around involving out-of-state candidates to gain an administrative license from an out-of-state program. 2 was to embed the revised TILs into the leader policy, the leadership learning policy. And 3 was to delete the old professional development aspect of the policy, because that has been updated through 2 subsequent policies on teacher leadership and also on the professional learning standards that are there. So all 3 of those were updates discussed yesterday and for your review today.
Okay, questions for Paul? Any discussion? Is there a motion that we approve on first reading? Got a motion? Second? Got a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Paul did a great job on this. He took 50 pages and got it down to 29 pages. We told him yesterday, now if he can come back next time and get that 29 down to about 15, we'll really be making progress. Appreciate it, Paul.
You're welcome.
Okay, you've got item B.
Yes, so on the second item related to educator licensure, also want to take this time just shortly to briefly commend our team. This is a massive undertaking for educator licensure, and led by Dr. Amy Wooten and our team has really done, I think, an outstanding job over a multi-year period to be cohesive and bring forward a cohesive and coherent licensure policy. This, again, is a massive undertaking, so want to make that note. This is for some greater clarity and additional information on, as we discussed yesterday, also the workshop, numerous examples of adding greater clarity. One, for example, around principals who want to maintain their teaching license and making it easier to do so by counting their professional development that they receive as a principal towards their teacher license, so that they would be used in lieu of the professional development points that are required by teachers. That was one example. There were many, I know, discussed yesterday, but we bring that to your review today under the revisions for the educator licensure policy.
Okay, questions for Paul? Is there a motion to approve on first reading? Got a motion, Carolyn? Is it second? Second. Okay, any questions? Okay, all in favor of approval, say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Good job. Okay, we'll now move to license restoration rule and policy 5.5. Angie?
Okay. Good morning, Chairman
Morning.
and members. The first item that I have for you is changes to the license restoration rule and policy. This is basically an effort for us to clarify some things in the policy and the rule with regard to the process that teachers need to go through to get their license restored, either after a denial of the license application or a revocation of their license in the past, or after their license has been suspended. So, I know we went into this a lot more yesterday, but we made the biggest changes to the policy as far as clarifying the process with regard to restoration after suspension, which is different than restoration after denial or revocation of the license. And I'm happy to take any additional questions.
Okay, questions for Angie? Carolyn, you have an item that we need to add.
Yes. Angie, first of all, I just want to thank you for all the detail you went into with us yesterday, because we did have a lot of questions and a lot of discussion, and I appreciate all your work on this. One of the things that we wanted to look at in the proposed rules language under 3B, at the very end, before the strikeout section starts there, just after Office of Educator Licensing, we would like to add, or I would like to make an additional clause there, or a phrase that says, and forwarded to the State Board Council. Mm-hmm. And so that sentence then would read, application for such issuance or restoration shall be made to the Office of Educator Licensing and forwarded to the State Board Council, just so that there's more clarification about the sequence of the process.
Yes, and as we discussed yesterday, I think that's a great addition to that. We can either, I believe, add it as a verbal amendment now, or when we bring it back for final reading, have that as an addition that we just made on final reading.
Let's go ahead and add it to the motion here.
Sure.
Carolyn's got it written out, so she'll give it to Phyllis so that make sure they got the words right.
Do we amend the language formally and then we vote on it as amended?
I think that in this case we could do it that way, but I think in this case we could just say that, you know, we're adding that before we vote, and that's included in the final vote that we would take. We could do it either way, but
Doesn't matter to me.
okay. You want to make a motion that we do something then? Okay. Well, what we'll do, we'll add that to the material that was distributed and include that in the motion. And Lonnie's got a second. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Again, as we've said, that we went into this in substantial detail yesterday, and I believe this is a good addition. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, we'll now move to item D, parent-family involvement in community school policy. Angie, you're still up.
Yes. So this policy change is based on the Community Schools Act that was passed last year by the legislature. It basically discussed encouraging LEAs to create community schools, and then it also included a provision allowing teachers to receive in-service credit for teaching parenting classes at these community schools. And we thought the best place for this to live would be in the parent-family involvement policy, since the kind of the purpose of community schools is to bring the community together, and it's specifically discussing teaching parenting classes. So we've just added to the end of this policy a discussion around community schools and encouraging LEAs to create them, as well as allowing teachers to receive in-service credit for teaching parenting classes at these community schools. And we're renaming the policy Parent-Family Involvement and Community Schools.
Okay, questions for Angie? Carolyn?
Just to comment again, I want to thank you for moving it where it previously was proposed to go, this section, because I felt very uncomfortable where it was targeted for before. And it's I think there is a link here with the parent-family involvement in the community schools, so thank you for putting it where we've put it to make the policy fit what the legislation demands.
And thank you for bringing that to our attention at the last meeting. I appreciate that.
Okay. Carolyn, you want to make a motion to approve?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay, is there a second? Got a second. Okay, any discussion? Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, Angie, you're
I've got a marathon session.
Yeah, yeah. We've had all kinds. Yeah.
So the next item is a change to our rule on school board training, and this was brought to us by the School Board Academy Advisory Committee. They are recommending that we make a change to our rule to clarify what their current practice is, which is for new school board members that they attend a 14-hour orientation training, as well as the 7-hour training that they're required to attend every year. And this would only be in the first year. So in their first year, they would be required a 14-hour training plus the 7 hours, and then every other year after that, it would only be the 7 hours.
Okay. Questions? Questions for Angie?
What happens if they don't attend the 14 hours?
I think they are required by law to attend a training every year. And since we're putting in our rule that they have to attend their first year 14 hours plus the 7 hours, and then every year after that we're specifying that it's only 7 hours. If they don't attend it, then they would be out of compliance with the law. And so I'm thinking they would probably either have to make up those hours, or they may be in danger of losing their position.
They would lose office?
I'm not sure. I would have to check on that for you and get back to you on that.
Would their votes be void?
Their votes up to that time?
No, from the moment they became non-compliant, would their votes be counted as valid votes? I'm trying to figure out of all these LEAs, what if they just choose not to do it?
And I can look into that a little more and see exactly what the law around that says. I know they're required to attend an annual training. I would have to get back to you, though, on what the actual consequence would be if they didn't attend that. And since this is on first reading, I can definitely get back to you between now and final reading.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Thank you.
Cato.
In fact, I want to follow up on that. Dissemination of communication on this issue, because it goes to what Mike brought up. How broadly and how widespread do the LEAs know about this particular issue? And that's what you can bring that back to us next time, because they don't know, you're not going to have compliance.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chairman.
I think they know it's.
Well, new
I'd
members.
be interested in having a report back not only on the kind of the consequences Mike was talking about, but what kind of success do we feel like we're having or not having in accomplishing this?
And also, Mr. Chairman, a new member who is elected, how quickly will that new member be brought up to speed that this is a requirement if you're a new board member? Because we have elections all throughout the process.
Right.
Angie, let me just say, I have been on this advisory committee to the Tennessee School Boards Association from this board. I'm representing. We have an annual meeting, and they go through their the program every year and who all has attended, and I think they have really good attendance on most of these, and they provide a number of ways that school board members can meet these requirements, because they have sessions throughout the year at different times and different locations, I believe, that they can attend. I would suggest perhaps, though, that at our next meeting we invite the School Boards Association representative to be here and give our board more information about that program, because it's really exciting for me to hear the things that go on and the number of board members we have in our local school district boards who are so diligent in attending board meetings and getting more information, whether it's legal information, financial information as to their responsibilities as a school board member. It's really amazing some of the work that's being done by in that educational program.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We could certainly invite TSBA to come to the next meeting and give you some more background on what these training programs actually look like. And I can come back with you and get you your answers to your questions about what happens if they don't attend the training before the next meeting.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve on first reading? So moved. Got a motion? Second? Got a second? Any questions? Okay. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Angie, you're still up.
Okay. So the next item I have for you is the creation of a new policy on standards review. And this is basically because it has been the state board's practice, at least in the past, to review standards every 6 years. But it doesn't live anywhere in policy currently. So we thought it was a good idea that we actually put that practice into policy, just saying that all standards will be reviewed every 6 years. There's some provisions in there allowing for an extension of up to a year. It can also be reviewed earlier, like in the case of the ELA and math standards. If we feel like 6 years is too long, there needs to be something done in the interim, then that's also included.
Okay, questions? Sarah?
If I could add, yes, and just to reiterate what Angie was saying, I think this is particularly important because of the math and ELA review process that the State Board is charged with leading this summer, which is occurring earlier than the sort of standard 6-year interval. And I think the other thing that this policy will do is hold us all accountable, and our colleagues at the department as well, for having a transparent way for tracking and sharing with the public, when standards are up for review. Certainly through the math and ELA review process and the public comments that we're receiving on those standards, there's a lot of interest, I think, in understanding more about how the standards review process takes place, when each standards across our 300-plus set of student standards are up for review. So I think this policy will just enable us to have a more transparent way of communicating that with all of our stakeholders.
Okay. Questions, comments? Mike?
We have a lot of standards. We think a whole lot these days of math and language arts or science, but we've got CTE, we've got within that, a whole bunch of substandards like marketing and stuff. This is going to be a lot of work. Good work, glad we're doing it, but I hope we understand that there is going to be a considerable amount of man-hours needed to do this, particularly knowing that we're going to want to do it right. So I say that just so everybody kind of understands. My big question is, when we're going to do it every 6 years, does that mean that we begin the process every 6 years, or that we have a proposal to vote on every 6 years?
So
Because really, kind of in a way, about the time we put one to bed, we're getting ready to we start on the revision of the other one, because it takes a couple of years to get it right, doesn't it?
the policy only says that we're required to review them. So I'm sure the department, the commissioner may be able to speak to this a little bit better, but I think it's just that we would start the process of reviewing it every 6 years. We would need to be mindful of the textbook review process and things like that to make sure that they're lining up, but making sure that we get a good tracking system in place to make sure that we know when was the last time this standard was reviewed, so that we can make sure that we are working with the department to keep this process on track.
So, sort of let's say that we go through our 6-year review on all of our standards, and they're spread out over. And out of those, we find that 25% need to be amended, altered, updated, whatever. Does that trigger another timeline that goes through a process by which we actually change the standards? And secondly, we have learned that the standards really don't, we can focus on the standards, but if we're not focusing on those assessments that accompany the standard, we got a real nightmare during that seam. So we really ought to be thinking from a policy standpoint, from the moment a new standard goes into place, that new assessment is sitting there to go with it. Mm-hmm. The end.
Sarah or Candace, you want to?
I'll start.
Both of you to comment.
I was taking notes. I hope I can get to all your points, Mike. But I think your first point is a really important one for us all to acknowledge, and I appreciate you making that point, in that I kind of swallow hard when we pass this, because this will hold us to a 6-year timeline, and it will force us to make sure that we really are looking at all 300 plus sets of student standards. And there are going to be resources, time included, but also monetary to do this well. And so I think we do need to be acknowledging that as we think about what this will look like. The other piece, though, I think, in working with Angie on the language for this policy is that we've left it intentionally broad in terms of process. When you look at what we're preparing to do on math and ELA, it's extensive, it's very resource intensive, time intensive, and it should be. These are our core academic standards. As we look at some of the other standards, they're all important, and we want them all to be strong student standards. The process may look different, though. It may not include quite as many subcommittees, committees, review sort of steps. So I think what we'll need to do in collaboration with the department is to really establish sort of some templates for review processes that look slightly different depending on the type of student standard we're looking at and what resources are involved, and then we'll need to be budgeting and thinking about the timeline with a number of things in mind. I still think it's the right thing to do and the right way to be approaching this in a more systematic way, but it is going to force us to really think strategically about time and resources. And I think your point about assessment is also one that we all need to note as well, because really standards become real when you look at the types of assessments that measure what we're attempting to teach our students in each grade and subject. So, Candace, I'll
Yeah, I also appreciate the comments about the time intensity of this. If it's done well, certainly you want to make sure you give it adequate time. A review could, though, end up with no change. So you could have changes. They could be extensive. They could be minor. There could be no changes. So we don't know. But this will help us to make sure that it's part of a long-term process that we're monitoring. In terms of the date, in the very first paragraph, it does say the 6-year period shall be calculated beginning from the date on which a particular set of standards was last approved on final reading of the board. And so that will help us stagger the review over time, and so we do feel like that staggering will allow us the time that will be needed to look at the variety of sets of standards that we have. So I appreciate the comments.
Okay, good comments, questions. Carolyn?
Yes, my question is, once you all get into this and see when standards have been passed in the past, I would love for us to have a listing of those standards with the date they were last reviewed or last approved, I guess it would be appropriate to say, so that we kind of have some idea of the scope and the numbers and the sequencing.
I think that's an excellent point. That's certainly step one, and I think, again, that will allow all of us on the board and our stakeholders to see which standards will be coming up for review in the next several years, so we can be planning ahead and looking at that sort of comprehensively. So most definitely.
Okay.
And I would also say that would allow us to budget appropriately for the review process. So we will absolutely be doing that timeline anyway. So appreciate that.
Yep. Okay, other questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve? Got a motion, Cato, Mike? Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Angie.
Okay. The next item is a small change to the unsafe school choice policy. At the October 2014 meeting, you all made a change to this policy based on a new law that went into effect. But we realized after we looked through the policy change that it wasn't properly updated to reflect the change in the language or the definition of aggravated assault. So all this is doing is properly changing the definition to comply with existing statute on what aggravated assault is.
Okay, questions for Angie? Any
No,
questions?
but I just do want to make the comment, if I may, because when this came up last year, I remember asking if we had any quote, unsafe schools in Tennessee that had been designated as such, and we did not have last year. Is it true we still don't have any unsafe designated schools in Tennessee?
I'm not sure. I don't know if the department knows the answer to that.
I'm looking to my colleagues. An answer to that? Dr. Earhart, do you know?
I think the explanation last year was that this is, it's a policy, it's a designation from legislation or whatever, but that we really don't have any schools that fall into that category. Right. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Other questions?
Well, to ask an embarrassing question, what is a designated unsafe school?
Yeah.
So that's, I think it's defined in the policy, if I'm remembering. They have to have a certain number of violent crimes that occur at the school. It has to be over a certain period of time. So they have to come up with a plan in order to remedy the issue. And if it's not remedied within a certain period of time, then they are at risk of being designated an unsafe school. But it's without digging into the policy too much. It's in here. I think it better explains.
And I would even clarify, if you look at the very first page in that section 1, the persistently dangerous schools, there's 3 criteria listed there. Those would specify exactly the disciplinary actions and the different type of records that a school would have that would put them in that particular category.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve? Cato? Second. Carolyn? Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, Angie?
Okay.
This is the last one.
Last one from me, I promise. This last one is a change to our board meetings policy. We had significant discussion about this yesterday at our workshop. The first change that we're bringing is just a clarification regarding what items qualify for the consent agenda for board meetings. I know that we had additional discussion about some other items that we want to include in this policy that we will be bringing for final reading. One of those was adding some language regarding deleting agenda items and what that process would look like. That was brought to us by Lillian. And then I think there was also, Lonnie had brought a discussion of the method of voting in order to make sure that the chairman, since generally the chairman is the last one to vote rather than voting in alphabetical order. So those are 2 changes that we're going to propose on final reading, if that's okay with you all. But the main change for this reading is just regarding what comes on consent. And then another change that I meant to mention that we had considerable discussion that we're going to bring for final reading is the reading requirements for board policy changes. Currently, in our policy, it says that board policy changes would be 1 reading, and then new board policies would be 2 readings. I think that after our discussion yesterday, we were thinking that we need to default to 2 readings at all times and then put in some additional considerations for when an item might qualify for 1 reading if it's a board policy change. So those will be included on final reading, but for this purposes of this first reading, it's just the changes to the definition of what qualifies on consent.
And really, to do a first reading, kind of get it on the table, and knowing we're going to make some of these changes, and we'll bring it back on second reading to get that fine tuning done. Any questions? As Angie said, we had a good bit of discussion about this yesterday, and I think it's something that we haven't updated this policy. We haven't let it update in 6 years like we're talking about with the standards. So
it's 10 years old, so it's time.
It's in need of attention. So we'll plan to bring it back for second reading next. Any questions? Questions, comments? Is there a motion that we approve on first reading? Got a motion? Second? Got a second, Lillian? Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Angie. Appreciate it.
Chairman, members.
Okay, Tess, charter school appeals.
Good morning. I present to you on first reading changes to the charter school appeal policy to provide the board additional information in an appeal, as well as clarify some points in our policy for both sponsors and districts in the event of an appeal. These changes are outlined on your cover sheet, but I did want to take a moment to talk about them as well. The first change requires, as a part of a notice of appeal from a sponsor, for them to provide letters, copies of the letters from the LEA that inform them of the reason for denial, as well as a document outlining any corrections made to the application. Under statute, the applicant is allowed to make corrections upon appeal, and we want a document that's clearly outlining what those changes are. Secondly, we require documents requested by this board staff in an event of appeal to be returned to us within 5 days of that request. And lastly, we clarify that in accordance with statute, the state board will conduct a separate analysis for each application that was denied based upon substantial negative fiscal impact. And the staff is recommending this policy be approved on first reading, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions? Wendy.
Hi. First, I just want to thank you, Tess, and the staff for all of the work you've done on the charter school policies, especially since we became an authorizer. You've had a lot on your plate, and you guys have done a fantastic job and have been remarkably patient and responsive to me. So I want to thank you for that. We had some conversation. I had conversation with some of the staff about a thought that I had on this policy, and I didn't have it in front of me when we had that conversation about the procedure makes it clear that the staff goes through a process and then issues a recommendation to the director, and then it comes to the board. And my request, suggestion would be, although I think we all know this, to be very clear and make maybe a clarifying sentence in the part that describes the process, that recommendation is advisory in nature. Mm-hmm. And I think we all get that, but given the big weight on our shoulders as an authorizer, and the fact that these schools, whether we accept them or deny them, have spent a year at least preparing the application, I think it would make sense to have in the policy something that just states, it sort of reiterates the importance of the board looking at the process. So that was the conversation we had that I just wanted to bring up here.
And I also wanted to clarify that yesterday we talked about some language change on page 4 of 5, section 8A, the very last sentence, the language where it says, if ruling at a regular meeting or prior to the agenda item, if ruling at a special called meeting, that was confusing language and that you would modify it so that it would be clear what we're talking about.
Yes, we will take both of those points of feedback, and when we bring it up for final reading, we'll make sure to incorporate those sorts of language for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tess, yesterday you talked about the communication process that you would go through after this. Could you lay that out again?
Certainly. Actually, immediately following this meeting, we are going to a meeting of the Tennessee Association of Charter School Authorizers, which is a group of districts who come together quarterly, and we will be discussing these changes to the policy so that they are aware of them, as well as getting feedback. Maybe there are other things that we need to update in this policy, as well as we have done extensive outreach thus far to districts who have received an application for a charter school so that they know about what the appeal process would look like should an appeal come for us. And as we get further through the application process through the summer, we will do more outreach to them as well so that they are prepared should an appeal come to us.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Other questions? Lonnie?
Do me a favor and walk through the process where a school applies for a charter school and the process until it gets to us.
Sure. So February 1st, all sponsors must submit a letter of intent to a proposed district. That does not mean that they will apply, but they must submit a letter of intent. April 1st, they must submit their application. From there, the district has 90 days to vote on that application. If they do not vote, it's automatically approved per statute. From there, if it's denied, they do have an opportunity for an amendment process through the district, and then it's brought back to the district for a second vote. After that process, if it's denied for a second time by the district, that is when each sponsor has the right to appeal to the state board, and they have 10 days to do that after that second denial. Oh, okay.
And then?
And continue from there. At that point, if it's received on appeal, that's when our process would begin. So we bring in an external review team to do a de novo review of that application. Additionally, we hold a public hearing in the district, which gives the opportunity for the LEA and the sponsor to discuss the reasons for denial or the reasons that the sponsor believes the LEA erred in that decision. Additionally, we have opportunity for public comment at that. And then from there, based on all the information, so the review committee's work, information from the LEA, as well as the public hearing, that all goes into a findings and recommendation report that the executive director presents to the board. And all of our process has to happen in 60 days from the notice of appeal.
Is there any time that the district can come back and say, we want to relook at this before it would come to us to approve a charter?
So in a decision in which the board would authorize, so currently the board can authorize in districts that have a priority school on the current list or the preceding list. If the board were to decide to authorize a school in those districts, there's a 30-day period in which the sponsor and the LEA can decide together and agree that the LEA will oversee that school. And at that point, the state board would not be a part of the equation anymore. It would be a school authorized by the district, as we see many other schools are. So our process as we're thinking through this is that we would send an initial letter to the sponsor and the district notifying them that they've been authorized, but then also letting them know there is this 30-day period of time, and that we would then wait to see what happens in that 30-day period. And then after that, we would begin our process of initiating a contract with a school should we be the authorizer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is I think, a very thorough process. But Tess, congratulations on being able to walk through that without notes. Okay. Thank you for asking, Lonnie. Any questions? Okay, Mike.
So,
Mike, I want you to do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, what'd you say? All right, so the applicant submits, the LEA reviews, the LEA turns down the applicant has a period of time to cure the issues that were articulated by the rejection, resubmits it. Can the LEA then use issues they didn't raise in the first go-around to deny the issuance of the charter agreement in the second go-around?
I'm going to defer to I think they can. I don't think there's specifically something in statute that says they can deny. They can't deny based on two different reasons. I know for a fact that there are some local board policies that prevent them from taking a second look at parts of applications that they've already said meet standard. But there's nothing specifically in statute that says that they can't.
So you can, if you want to, if you're an LEA, you have the opportunity to deny based on one set of criteria. They cure it, supposedly, assuming they do cure it, they resubmit it and are denied based on other issues.
Yes. Now
without having given notice that they got heartburn over it.
Right. And that would be something that when we're bringing a recommendation to the board that we would outline for you all so that you understand that they were given one set of criteria that they needed to fix, and that when they resubmitted, they were then said, well, this side of criteria is now our problem. So that's a part of all of the information that we would be consolidating and presenting to the board as a part of a findings and recommendation. And also, I just want to note, too, that in statute, local districts are only encouraged to adopt national authorizing standards, while the state board is required to adopt them. So we do see a wide variety of authorizing practices across the state. So that's why sometimes you will see districts holding a capacity interview with their applicants and some don't, but it's not a requirement.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve on first reading? Got a motion? Second? Got a second. Okay. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Tess, thank you. Good job. Appreciate it. Okay, we will now move to the action items on final reading. Action item A, Charter School Authorizer Policy 6.110. Tess.
Yes, this is our final authorizer policy on final reading that I'm bringing to you. This is in the area of revocation of a charter agreement. So this would cover the issues when the state board would hear an appeal from an LEA based on the revocation decision of an LEA, as well as if the board were to authorize a school, how we would handle revocations of those schools. There's only been one minor change in this policy since first reading, and it's the title of Section 1. It used to be just appeals, and now it's appealing an LEA's revocation decision, just to provide additional clarity to this policy. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Tess? Is there
a question? I have a
Wendy?
comment.
Okay.
I just want to say that, and we discussed this policy as you guys were developing it, and I think it is a very rigorous policy. And I believe if we are going to give the autonomy to schools to be charter schools, that it is very important that we also hold them accountable. And I mean, I'm a firm believer in accountability across the systems, but I believe this makes a statement that we are serious, that we're willing to go there, but that you're going to have to meet. So I applaud the rigor of this process.
Okay. Questions? Is there a motion to approve? Got a motion? Second, Wendy? Okay. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Tess, thank you. Okay, we'll now move to several course standards, and what I suggest we do is take B, C, and D as a unit. And Casey, you got to talk about those?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. It's my pleasure to be here today in Danielle's stead. She does bring her regrets from D.C., where she's attending a conference. If we were going to combine items B through D, those sets of core standards, we do have some changes since first reading of these standards and included in these items. The College and Career Readiness Division has accepted feedback from Tennessee educators, CTE directors, industry experts, and post-secondary leaders during our open public comment period. Teachers have included more than 30 teachers across the 10 courses you're seeing in these three items, and industry includes in-person meetings with industry groups such as the Tennessee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Contractors Association, and work directly with the National Center for Construction Education and Research, NCCER. In fact, we do have a signed memorandum of understanding with NCCER now that does align our architecture and construction courses with their nationally recognized training modules. In fact, I've provided copies of that MOU to board staff if you would like those for your records. Based on the feedback from industry and those teachers I mentioned, the following changes have been made to these items since first reading. We've updated our course description information with revised course numbers, teacher endorsement codes, and staff contact information. We've made minor grammatical and formatting edits, including adding some clarifying language where reviewers have requested it. And we've also added some very specific content to address gap areas identified by those reviewers. Specifically, I'll point to adding some information about electrical codes, inspection procedures, and contracting in some of the architecture and construction courses, and adding information around international trade opportunities in both the business and marketing courses. So the Department of Education recommends adoption of this item on final reading, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions for Casey? Any questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve items B, C, and D? Got a motion? Is there a second? Cato, a second. Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Casey. And you've got the next one, item E.
I will. I'll stay here for, this is an update to State Board Policy 3.205, which is the approved high school course list. And this policy identifies the courses that have been approved by the board for instruction across the state. This item updates sections 6 and sections 12 through 29 to reflect the new renamed and revised courses being proposed by Career Cluster, as well as the removal of courses that are being retired or replaced. In addition, the item will also update the course list with course additions to both the advanced placement and international baccalaureate programs, and these submitted course revisions are being recommended for implementation in this coming school year. Since first reading, we do have some additional footnotes have been added, and these footnotes call attention to course equivalencies that are being recommended by both the Division of Curriculum and Instruction and the Division of College and Career Readiness, which includes some visual art, wellness, social studies, elective credit, and lab science credit for specific career and technical education courses that we've been updated with more rigorous standards, and those are listed in sections 12 through 29. Again, I'll be happy to take any questions y'all have.
Any questions? Mike?
How do we, starting on page 6 and looking at these courses that are really industry specific, one, how do we credential people to teach those courses? And two, do we have problems finding skilled, knowledgeable people to credential?
Yes, and actually I'm going to ask Heather Justice to come up. Heather is our current Director of Talent Improvement in Career and Technical Education, so she oversees teacher licensing, and she can talk more about the specifics for our occupational licenses.
Thank you. The answer is, specifically in the courses that we have, we actually require industry certifications of the teachers to teach those courses, specifically where we may have industry certifications tied to that course. The recruitment and retention issue is actually a research project that we're currently undertaking. Excuse me. Got a little shaky. So we're actually breaking that down by endorsement area. So we'll have a better kind of idea about how many years teachers come in with that industry certification and stay in or exit out of teaching. So that should be completed at the end of this year.
Okay, so somebody retires from the Navy, has the highest certification in welding, wants to go into teaching, how would that work?
They would actually apply for an apprentice occupational license, and they would enter in with that what will now be called a practitioner occupational license. And we give them 3 years to complete a teacher preparation course of study. But essentially, their content, his welding experience, actually meets the requirements in his content area. So you can think of his work experience and industry certifications similar to a praxis test. Their content and background serves as their content knowledge. Then they just have 3 years to complete that teacher preparation program, and then they can advance to a professional license.
So, did we not have a program at one time for hard to fill where people could come out of the one used in Knoxville all the time, that some physics guy, Oak Ridge, wants to teach, and he can go and get credentialed real quick and then get put into the classroom, which may or may not have ever happened. I've slept since then. Would that not...
Yeah, it applies as well. So they have several options, whether that's industry certification or testing, where they can demonstrate their content knowledge, and then that would allow them to get their teaching license. So we try to make that as easy as possible, and over the last few years, we've actually recommended, and the board has approved several changes to allow for that more easier entrance, requiring where we have industry certification and industry experience, allowing to count for that content knowledge. In addition to, for your example, in Oak Ridge, if they have post-secondary experience, that also counts to kind of let them having more seamless entrance into teaching. And then we can provide that teacher preparation coursework once they are in there and support them during that process.
The reason I'm asking this, I'm going to shut up, is that while I imagine some of these areas are really hard for industry to find, so I'm thinking they got to be pretty hard for you all to find. And if you can find a star, the quicker you can get them into the classroom, the better, right?
I believe you may have also been referencing a program that started under Governor Bredesen, the Teach Tennessee program. Okay, I think that's what you're referencing, and we certainly are looking at what Teach Tennessee looks like going forward. We're in a year of studying the quality of that and looking at what we would recommend going forward. So I believe that's what you're referencing, and we will be talking more about that.
Okay. Other questions? Carolyn?
I don't know if this is appropriate to ask you all or not, but as I was reading the intro page on this item, on the second side, talking about the IB curriculum, changes to that program, to best serve their students through the IB curriculum, there's a need for IB native language courses beyond English to be part of Tennessee's approved high school course list. The Department of Education recommends IB German language and literature courses be included in the state's list of approved high school courses. Now, this was to address, evidently, German-speaking students, native German-speaking students in Hamilton County. Is that new to this item? I mean,
this just adds those courses that are in the IB curriculum to our approved course list. So we've already approved a bulk of the IB courses, and this just adds those German-speaking courses.
So I guess my question is, do we have any other foreign languages in IB courses? Because we have a lot of native, non-English speaking students in our state.
Absolutely.
Who could probably do IB courses in their native language.
Absolutely. We can take that back to take a look and do a study on what's available and then what we've seen a need for in the state.
I just had not remembered seeing that kind of course before. It may have been on the list before and I just overlooked it. But, I mean, I thought we've had Japanese industry come in and we've had many, of course, Spanish-speaking students. So I would like to know if there's an opportunity for other languages in AP courses or IB courses.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Is there a motion to approve on final reading? Got a motion? Second? Got a second?
Second.
Okay. Bill? Any questions? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you,
Thank you
Casey.
so much.
Thank you. Okay. Emily, Cambridge International Education Programs Rule.
Good morning. Cambridge International Examinations is an internationally recognized provider of international education for students ages 5 through 19, offering a continuum of studies from primary levels through upper secondary levels. The courses are comparable in rigor to those offered by IB and College Board's advanced placement programs, and the Cambridge International Examinations program is flexible, so it can be tailored to student interests. Courses emphasize the international relevance of focusing on developing 21st century skills, and scores for these certain assessments may meet credits at top colleges and universities throughout the world. Metro Nashville and Bradley County Public Schools are currently offering Cambridge courses. These systems have made both a philosophical and a monetary commitment to offer these courses, and they both completed significant stakeholder engagement, including parent meetings, in the lead up to the decision to offer Cambridge. The department has reviewed the Cambridge courses and agrees that the programs meet the current Tennessee state standards and graduation requirements for English language arts, science, math, fine arts, and foreign language. We are seeking approval of the Cambridge International Examinations pathway to the Tennessee diploma. That lists the courses students enrolled in the program will need to take in order to receive a Tennessee high school diploma. The pathways document also lists which assessments students will be required to take for each course. Since first reading, we have updated all of the titles and courses on the course list and pathways document, added Cambridge to the uniform grading system rule, and updated the rule numbering to align with the state board rules currently in promulgation. We've also revised all the documents to make the terminology consistent. We do recommend approval on final reading of this pathway.
Okay, questions for Emily? Any questions? Is there a motion to approve on final reading? Got a motion? Second? Second. Any questions? Okay, this is a rule, so it requires a roll call vote. Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please. Aye. The ayes have it. The rule is approved. Emily, thank you. We'll now move to the student loan provisions, and Joanne,
Good morning. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 49-5-108D2, the State Board of Education must suspend a license for default on a student loan. And before you is a list of individuals who have defaulted on student loans and have been notified by the Tennessee Student Assistance Corporation, or TSAC. And TSAC provides 90 days notice for educators to come into compliance, and the State Board of Education provides another 30 days notice to make arrangements with TSAC. Thus, educators have at least 120 days notice before their licenses are suspended. And the State Board staff recommends action on the amended list that you received at the workshop.
okay, questions on the list, and to make sure that we're looking at the list that we did receive at the workshop yesterday. It's a little bit different than the one that was originally submitted. I guess, we're seeing a lot of these each meeting, it seems like. For a while we didn't see any, and then all of a sudden, is there a big backlog of these out here that we're working off, or?
No. So we receive new default notifications every week. And so moving forward, we have discussed ways to work with the school system so that maybe they can help their educators come into compliance before the board meetings. So it has been expressed to us by the schools that it would be very helpful if we let them know who is on the list. And so we're working to hash out that notification system, because oftentimes if the school systems are in the loop ahead of time, they can clue the educator in on what the steps are to come into compliance. So we're hoping that that will help moving forward to reduce the number of these items.
Question. Are most of these teaching today? Do we know that?
I don't know that. But these
making-
are individuals who have active licenses.
So are you doing a cross-reference?
We are not, but if that's something that you'd be interested in, we can
I was just trying to find out how are you going to find the schools if we don't know where they are.
Right. So we have talked about doing a mass email to either the superintendents or the HR departments that says, these are the individuals whose licenses are going to be up for vote at the next meeting. If you have any individuals from your school systems who are on this list, please contact them and work with them, let them know to contact TSAC to make arrangements. So we're hoping that that will spur some action.
Okay, other questions, Candace?
Yeah, let me note, from working with students in my former life that are in this situation, many times these are not teachers who are teaching. These are people who have a license but are actually not a teacher. And so I would say that would be the majority of the folks on this list, yes.
That's the assumption we made, yeah. Yes, Carolyn?
I just wanted to make a comment. I heard the other day, I guess it was on NPR when I was driving, I had the radio on, and there was a brief news item about states that were trying to, there was an effort in certain states to remove this sort of legislation that requires professional licenses to be removed from by student default loans, because it puts that person in a terrible setting. I mean, if they don't have their license, they can't work in their chosen field or their field that they've been licensed in. And so I don't know if there's any movement legislatively here going on, but that's something that could be an option for changing this, I guess.
Just to respond to that, I don't believe there's currently legislation this year with regard to that, but maybe in the future it's something that we could work toward.
Okay, other questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve? Got a motion to approve? Thank you, Lonnie. Okay, second? Got a second. Okay, any discussion? Any other questions? Okay, it requires a roll call vote, so Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please. Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. The motion is approved. We'll now move to the teacher licensure actions. And Joanne, you have that?
Sure. Under State Board Rule 05-20-2-4-.019B, the State Board may revoke, suspend, or formally reprimand or refuse to issue or renew a license for good cause. The State Board Review Committee recommends licensure action for the individuals in this item. And as discussed at the workshop, we removed a number of these actions for further review. And you noted for the record during the consent items the ones that we were removing. And I also wanted to add 6E to that list. I believe at the workshop that it was intended that we also include E on that list.
We decided this morning to put E back on the list, so
okay.
We're not removing E.
Okay, thank you. So you will be voting on the amended list, which will include E but removes C and H through K.
Correct. Okay. Any questions? Wendy?
So, sort of. We had a lot of discussion about this yesterday, and I want to thank you for all of your work on this. And I just want to say that I had requested that E get back on the list, and so I just want to sort of have a little bit of conversation about that, a short conversation about that. The items that were removed, as we said in that meeting yesterday, were removed because several of us expressed concerns about the recommended, particularly the restorations of licenses and some of the suspensions that would effectively be allowing those teachers to be the retroactive suspensions that would allow some of the teachers to apply for their licenses now, and concerns about the allegations and whether they should be licensed, whether they should be teachers, whether they should be allowed back in the classroom. And I think our conversation sort of directed us towards a future conversation, and if Sarah will let us know if I'm getting this wrong, about that policy and about the precedent that we want to set and about the message we want to send about the profession of teaching and the privilege of teaching and who we want in our classrooms, both elevate the profession, but also to be thinking about the best interests of our children. And so Mr. E was, I don't want to call people out, but E was a situation that appeared on its face to be one that needed to be reviewed, and I wanted it reviewed. It looks as if it was an allegation of inappropriate contact with a student that involved extensive text messaging and involved a statement by the student about inappropriate contact. The student has since recanted. I was under the impression yesterday that there were text messages, and it was my own mistake, not yours. There was content of text messages that was still disturbing, and apparently, I don't know if you want to clarify, apparently there are date stamps that there were texts back and forth, but there's no content to know. So given the reason I asked that we put it back on, there were other members with concerns that were very valid, that we wait 3 more months for this man to know his fate, really, right? In this, and that there weren't any facts to back up the subsequent review, and so that's why I asked to put this back on. Okay. Or several of us asked to put it back on.
Okay, thank you so much. And you're exactly correct that we do have the records of text messaging, but there is no content.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, is there a motion?
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chairman? This section always probably the most disturbing section when I get my packet to go through everything, looking at it, because I always hate to see people lose their license. But also you can't help people to make the right decisions in doing that. But I just want everybody to know how serious I think this board takes this and how much time we spend looking at it, because I think it is important to make sure that we have the right people in our classrooms taking care of our children and our grandchildren. And I always ponder and spend a lot of time on this, and I thank you for the work that you all do as you're digging through to get the details, and for sharing to help us get to the right decision, and I thank you for that.
And I appreciate your willingness to ask such tough questions yesterday at the workshop. These are such high stakes that there's really no room for error, so if we need to take extra time on some of these, I think that's a great idea.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Cato?
I agree with Lonnie. I want to thank the board and the staff for the rigorous debate we had on this issue yesterday. I think this is time well spent. We can never not spend enough time on this type of issue, and I just want to thank the board and the staff that we did spend the time on this issue.
Okay, other comments, questions? Okay, is there a motion that we approve the recommended actions for A, B, D, E, F, G, L, and M? Got a motion? Okay, any further questions, discussion? It requires a roll call. Phyllis, if you could call the roll, please. Aye. Okay, the motion is approved. That concludes our agenda. Bill, we certainly appreciate you being on the board. And
my pleasure, and I will say, having served on a number of boards locally and nationally, the public can know that this is a fully engaged board in every way.
Great. Thank you. And Sarah.
Good thing you came back the second time.
Okay, and Sarah, we appreciate all the work that you did on putting these 2 days together, and the staff's work on getting a full agenda for us for the last 2 days here. We appreciate it. Good work. We do have 2 more meetings in 2015, July 24th and October 23rd. We will, for sure, those are the Friday meeting dates. We will follow the practice, and I'm sure have a workshop on the preceding day. Okay, any other comments? If not, appreciate being here, appreciate your attendance. The meeting is adjourned.